I've lived in Chiswick now for 4 years, and it's never really a place I ever thought I'd end up living, especially not for so long. Because honestly, previously, last couple years before this, I'd been just bouncing around the different parts of London, to my beginning year in Tottenham Hale, to an oppressive year or so in Canonbury, to a really happy year in Peckham, a little couple months in Vauxhall, and here or there, another year in White City, and well, then to Chiswick. And you know, I didn't always have the kindest feelings for Chiswick. In fact, Dodie, do you remember the first thing I said about Chiswick when we were drinking at that cafe, like when I first visited you at one point? Do you remember what I said? No.
You're asking the wrong person.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, yeah, you're great with the memory. I just remember distinctly being like upset and being like, what is this place? Like, this is so far out, you know, this isn't London.
Oh yeah, you were like,
this
what are you
is its
doing
own
over
thing.
there?
This isn't London at all.
Yeah.
And you were like, oh no, it's lovely. I love the
Please
little high street.
come
Yeah,
west.
and like we get coffee. And I was like, I don't like it. It didn't feel like the London that I was used to. But in 2017, I ended up finding a really nice house near Gunnersbury Park that I moved into with my friends Luke and a lot of other friends. And for the next 4 years, Chiswick really was my home. To be honest, if you'd never heard of Chiswick up until this point, that would be more than understandable. Don't go around going like, wait, how have I never heard of this? It makes sense. Chiswick is absolutely not the normal tourist's first destination of choice when visiting London. Or the second. Or even the third, okay? The closest a tourist would actually probably get to Chiswick is Kew Gardens to the south. But hey, everyone that does live in Chiswick knows why we do. And let me explain for you. First of all, I do just feel like Chiswick is a place made for people that live in Chiswick. Yes, there are lots of things to do and come and visit, but I just feel like it's mostly like one of those places where it's just for people here. I don't know how to explain it. It's gonna sound crazy for me to be like, oh yeah, you should come visit Chiswick. We'll go to the business park. But it's a nice business park, okay? First of all, there's Chiswick High Street, a very long, bustling British side street. You're gonna hate me saying that, but that's what it is, and it's so lovely. There's trees all over the place. Yes, I'm talking about trees because if you've been to other parts of London, it's not so much a thing. But just seeing cyclists pass by, red buses, of course, yes, I'm an American still, okay? I'm excited by the bus color. It's exciting to me. With like light dappling the sides, there's butchers, bakers, loads of these niche little cute shops. And one of my favorite shops actually in the entire of Chiswick High Street is a place called the Old Cinema. And it's like this old antique store that has so many cool little oddities in it. You can find like some old leather boxing gloves from like the 20s and old maps, old armoires. And I've been there so many times. Now, have I ever bought anything at the Old Cinema? No. I assume that people that live in Chiswick can afford to buy stuff there, but I can't. But I like to go there as a date location. I've definitely been there 4 or 5 times at this point, and it just makes an interesting date. There's so many interesting things you can find in there and be like, oh, that's cool. That's 400 pounds. Never mind, sell my kidney. But hey, it's a nice place to go. After ending at the Old Cinema, I always liked going by Fobert's. I still don't know how to pronounce it at this point, but it's just a really nice Italian gelateria. Feels very homemade, like it feels like the ice cream I used to get back in the States, and so it feels really nice to get one of those, or possibly I'd go into one of the grade 2 listed pubs. There's so many of them in Chiswick, full of history, full of art, full of, well, I know that the last time I went there with a couple friends, my friend was like, oh, you want to pick me up a pint? So I went up, went 2 pints, please. He said 15 pounds. I went, no, I'm sure you've heard me wrong. I said 2 pints. He then looks at me weird, and well, that's when I realized, well, that's Chiswick, innit? Now, a completely unavoidable sight when walking through Chiswick is Christ Church in Turnham Green. It is such a beautiful, historic church. I've passed this church so many times in my life, and every time it just felt different looking at the way the sun hit it, or maybe the lack of sun, but just looking at it, I'd take so many photos of it, and at one point, me and my friends decided, you know what, we've seen this thing so many times. Tomorrow morning, Sunday, let's go. And it was a good time. Even though there were social distancing measures in place and, you know, COVID stuff was still going on, we still felt very welcomed, and it was such a nice place to be. But on the topic of Turnham Green, yes, it's very confusing, even for people that live here, that Turnham Green is actually near Chiswick Park Station, but Chiswick Commons near Chiswick Park, and you know, I don't want to get into it. Whoever named these places needs to be fired, okay? Who are you? Hogarth? I don't know. Now, for the first 2 years I even lived in Chiswick, I didn't even realize how close to the River Thames I actually was. It's just necessity never called for me to go that way. You know, I turn right out of my house. Guess what? I can get some food at the Sainsbury's. I can go to the station to get out of there. You know, pretty much I'm covered. Going left, I'll go to the park, but I don't really go much further that way. However, once lockdown measures are in place, public transit's closed, you can't really leave your own neighborhood, I began appreciating the area so much more because, hey, I didn't have anywhere else I could go. And I was able to find so much more history and so many more interesting things. I mean, just going to the river more often, it was just something I could appreciate so much more. Such an important river throughout the course of history, especially of the nation, but also just of the world. But like, I'll never forget the one time me and my friend Bliss decided to go for a run to the river, and I was so surprised. The entire street was completely flooded, up to the houses. The pubs were flooded. Like, it just looked so crazy. And you know what? Call me an idiot. I didn't know that rivers could flood like this through tides. I didn't know rivers had tides, all right? I thought the moon was busy with the oceans. So this was such a cool experience, especially because instead of just walking around it and continuing our run, we just went, this is cool, took off our shoes, and just waded through. And you know what? The NHS paid for the hospital bills. For all the dysentery. But it just felt like something so magical, an experience that was so exciting to see, especially because the locals in the area were like, what? This happens like every month for a couple months. But ever since then, I've tried coming back to the River Thames like way more often just to see how different it is. Wow, it looks so different at low tide. You can just walk through the river. Wow. And I've also checked up online to see like when the tide is going to be the highest, when there's potential of floods, so that way, as a photographer, I can go out and get as interesting shots as possible. Like the other day, I went at like 4:40 in the morning because I knew that was the exact time that sunrise was, also coincided with the flooding times. Perfect, was able to get a couple cool shots out there that, as a photographer, it just made me feel like, cool. I was able to capture Chiswick in a way that's interesting and unique, and also iconically Chiswick. In fact, one of my favorite photos I've ever taken that was in my first series of photographic prints that I sold was this photo of a boat. When I went out at like 8 in the morning, there was so much fog, it was so hard to see. So I went to the Thames and oh my gosh, everything around me was so serene, so calming, so mysterious. And so I managed to capture this little boat just rocking there with the Kew Railway Bridge behind. And it's just so beautiful. I love it so much. And it just, to me, was this testament that when it's difficult to go out in the morning early to get some interesting shot, just do it. Because I never have once regretted going out and like taking photos like that. So like I said, I'm so thankful that I've been able to capture these moments that I feel are so important to the area and publish them online and be like, I've now imprinted Chiswick in a way. Because the thing is, every walk back, every time I'd be heading back from the river, you end up passing all these terribly large, imposing homes on both sides of the road, and I would 9 times out of 10 just get depressed. I would look at them and I'd be like, I want to own one of these. You know, one day I'd love to just own this house that I could fill with my things next to the river in this area that I love, part of this community. And you know, the further I'd walk, the more I'd feel disheartened. Like, it's just so far out of my grasp. It's just not possible. The homes here are upwards of like 1.5 to £1 million, and there's just no feasible possibility of myself ever owning them. And so I might, after this disheartening feeling, have this invigorated drive at the end of the walk to be like, no, maybe one day, maybe I can do this. Maybe I just have to work a bit harder. And maybe that's the American in me, you know, underdog trying to climb on the way up. But it did actually work in helping me, motivate me to do more and try to just, I don't know, have higher aspirations, I suppose. And though I don't think I'll ever really own a place like this, well, at least I can rent the place out on Airbnb for a couple days after my tenancy expires. Hey, it's pretty cool. But if I'm being honest, just being in this place has hurt me more than I thought it would. So. And in fact, this place in which I'm staying is super close to one of the most beautiful parts of Chiswick, which is Chiswick House and Gardens. There's so many parks and places you can enjoy yourself in this area, but Chiswick House and Gardens puts the rest of them to shame in terms of just how well manicured it is. I feel like there are people going around that place, making sure every blade of grass is the exact way they want it to be. Beautiful flowers, trees, wildlife, the architecture that resembles that of Kew Gardens, because I'm fairly certain this conservatory area was made by the same guy that designed a lot of Kew Gardens. And then, of course, can't forget actual Chiswick House, this beautiful, beautiful building that I've just come to so many times for different sunsets. And I've also shot a bit of a music video there, and I'm so thankful that, yet again, it's my ability to imprint and allow the area in which I love so much to shine through in my art, if you will, and that I can kind of like leave a mark. This whole time I've just lived here, and I felt like, as someone who can't afford to buy here, I'm just renting. I'm just going to be some passing thing, you know, in and out. And so through my time creating things around this area, I just wanted to leave my mark a little bit. So little things like that Chiswick House in the music video and different photos I've taken help me feel like, not that it's not been a waste, obviously it hasn't been a waste, but just that like I can do it justice. Actually, while we're on the topic of Chiswick House, there was this one point I remember in which I just couldn't increase my running distance. I could run like 25, 30 minutes, and that was kind of it for me. And there was this one really nice spring day in which I ran all the way from my house to Chiswick Gardens, ran around a loop twice, and to this day, it's the furthest I've ever run. It was like 48 minutes long, it was like 7.5 kilometers. I felt so proud of myself, especially to end it and then just look at this beautiful park and then try and figure out the way back. But hey, the walk ain't bad. Now, despite being just a business park, I've spent a surprising amount of time in Chiswick Business Park. Sure, I did get therapy there, I had gym sessions there, but also I just really love how American the place feels. I think if you've been there, you'll understand what I'm saying, because so much of Chiswick and so much of the UK is very old mixed with new. And Chiswick Business Park is very much like, we're going to try and make something look really nice and manufactured new. And it's not bad. You know, it's not bad. There's like a cool man-made river and pond, and there's loads of wildlife, and I like that they've imported in all these nice trees, and the paths are always cool. The buildings are an interesting design. They have these weird pods out front where you're not really supposed to go in unless you work there, but hey, sometimes you can go in. What are you doing there? Just go in there, I don't know. But I remember this one time at 9:50 p.m., my friends and I are just walking through the business park because it's the fastest way to get from point A to B. And at one point, this incredibly overcompensating security guard shouts down from a window like, "Oi! You're not allowed to be here past 10, you gotta get out." And we're like, well, it's not quite 10, and we are going through. He's like, "Leave." And we're like, what do you think we're doing? You think we're gonna stay in the business park past 10? Like, what would we do there? So the next week, we spent the night in Chiswick Business Park. So Dodie,
Yes.
do you remember that time we almost saw the moon?
Yeah, well, the blood moon.
Yeah, the blood moon. The blood moon.
I saw the moon and no one else saw it.
And you didn't want to climb up the tower. You just left me on the 3rd floor.
Yeah, I was afraid.
Dodie did this thing she does every once in a while where she'll get everyone hyped on a plan and then bail at the last second. So she tells us 3 in the morning there's a blood moon. I get my entire house excited. I get 2 guests that are overexcited.
I saw it.
4 in the morning comes and she texts like, I'm a bit sleepy.
No, I came.
And I had to convince her back to coming.
It was a nightmare.
It was a nightmare. But we then get to here. She convinces me that she and Dan have gone up this staircase at one point. But then on the 3rd floor, you went, I'm out, mate. So I climbed all the way to the top, and I got this really nice shot overlooking all of the area. I was so excited about it. I was like, woo, photography. I came downstairs, everyone left. You guys had just ditched. You went back to look for the moon again.
Yeah, we were pretty tired.
But hey, it was a fun time. And it was just such a good memory of like me climbing back down the stairs, trying to show people the photo, finding out that everyone is gone because they're looking for the moon around the other side. And it was just a mess of a night, but it was an amazing memory and I'm very happy to have had it. From discovering some 15th century parish markers in the Gunnersbury Triangle Nature Reserve with my mom, to seeing the train pass by at Chiswick Common so close you can almost touch it, and also to the mosaic house in Chiswick. That's just this undiscovered gem where the walls are made of mosaic, there's cars that are made of mosaic, it's all about art. There's just so much to discover in Chiswick that a lot of people that live here haven't even known about. And you know what? I haven't cried yet making this video. Well, that's not true, but hey, here I am in Gunnersbury Park. I feel like I grew up here. I feel like I became who I am today in part because of this park. I've run in and around and through this park in different places and so many different ways and so many different days, and yet I still find it so exciting. From the Potter's Tower where they used to make clay to the duck pond I would take an Insta story at every single time I'd pass it, the new gym, the different hills and passes, and going out after a nice run to the clearing and seeing the sunset. It's just so beautiful each and every day, so large, there's always so much going on with it, and yet nothing at the same time. Sure, there's a lot of bits that are run down. The old stables, there's like a mansion that's just never going to be built up, supposedly now. There's like an abandoned mini golf park, and yet it's always so perfect. I love the amount of parakeets actually at this park just flying all around. I love the bench in the middle of the park where me and my friends would be antisocial on too many different days. I love the amount of dogs that people have around this area. There's just so much that I've loved here. And then my absolute favorite part of the entire park at all isn't even that special, and I don't think anyone would see it and really think it means anything at all. But there's this little ring of trees just nestled in the corner, and there's just something about it that brings me a sense of calm. It's just an empty field, but with this just circle of trees, and I've spent many hours in the heat kissing under its shade. I've spent many days writing a song and hating myself in the umbrage and just going there to escape if ever I'm stressed. And I feel like Gunnersbury Park has always been there for me. And yeah, one of the hardest parts about moving from Chiswick, in my opinion, for me, will just be leaving this park. I won't be able to take it with me. There will always be a really huge part of my heart here in Gunnersbury Park. And just seeing another sunset and all the seasons changing the way the park looks over time, just as I myself have grown and changed over time in its embrace. And you know what? I think I was right. You know, even though Chiswick is part of London, it really is its own thing. And no matter where my life takes me, I know I'll always have the memories from Gunnersbury Park and from Chiswick, and I'll always have those with me. And I'm so incredibly happy, thankful, and blessed to have been able to spend as much of my adult life here as I have. So thank you to Gunnersbury, to Chiswick, and I guess this is goodbye. So